If electric cars are so swell, how come we have to pay people to drive them?
The upfront costs of an electric vehicle are about $10,000 higher today than they are for an equivalent internal combustion engine vehicle today, but that cost is declining substantially. Right. And so this is a temporary intervention to help the auto industry strategically compete in global markets and to transition as battery costs fall.
You didn't hear my admonition, okay?
Sorry.
Doc, how about if electric vehicles are so swell, how come we have to pay people to drive them?
I think sorry, Senator, I'll step away from.
I'm sorry, I can't see the names.
Oh, it's Gross, Ms. Gross here. I'll defer to not comment on policy questions about incentives and so on. Maybe
Tell
pass
me
it
your
off
name.
to
I
Ms.
can't
Hinman.
see your name tag.
Gross? I can switch.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I can swivel it.
I apologize. Would you start over?
Okay. Did you just see that? That was Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, walking into what was clearly meant to be a polite, rehearsed Senate hearing about electric vehicles and just completely flipping the script. And honestly, I am here for it. Before we watch the full video, let me say this. I'm not here to tell you whether electric cars are good or bad. But what Senator Kennedy just did is something that almost never happens in these hearings. He asked a simple, honest question and refused to let it go unanswered. If electric cars are so swell, how come we have to pay people to drive them? That's it. That's the whole question. And watch what happens when he asks 5 so-called experts that very question. Watch how many of them actually answer it. I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with 0. I've got opinions, and I'll save them for after we watch the full thing together, because trust me, it gets better and more frustrating as it goes on. If you're new here, welcome. Hit subscribe because this is exactly the kind of content we live for on this channel. Real conversations, real accountability, no fluff. All right, let's watch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all our witnesses. I'm sorry I was late. I was in another committee. How many of you drive an electric car, own an electric car? Okay. You gentlemen don't?
If you mean electric by a battery electric, no. If you mean plug-in electric, yes.
Okay. Of the 3 folks who raised their hands, how many do you own gasoline-powered cars at all? No?
No, Senator.
No, all electric. Okay. Let me ask you all this, and please give me brief answers, because there are 5 of you, and there's only 1 of me. Okay? If electric cars are so swell, how come we have to pay people to drive them?
The upfront costs of an electric vehicle are about $10,000 higher today than they are for an equivalent internal combustion engine vehicle today, but that cost is declining substantially. Right. And so this is a temporary intervention to help the auto industry strategically compete in global markets and to transition as battery costs fall.
You didn't hear my admonition, okay?
Sorry.
Doc, how about if electric vehicles are so swell, how come we have to pay people to drive them?
I think sorry, Senator, I'll step away from.
I'm sorry, I can't see the names.
Oh, it's Gross, Ms. Gross here. I'll defer to not comment on policy questions about incentives and so on. Maybe
Tell
pass
me
it
your
off
name.
to
I
Ms.
can't
Hinman.
see your name tag.
Gross? I can switch.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I can swivel it.
I apologize. Would you start over?
I was just going to say I'd like to defer on policy grounds not to talk about policy incentives and so on, defer over to my colleague here, Ms. Hinman.
You don't believe in electric cars?
Oh, totally support electric vehicles and drive 3 of them myself.
So if they're so swell, how come we're having to pay people to drive them?
So just speaking personally then, not representing my company at this point.
Sure.
Speaking personally.
Who's your company?
EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute.
Oh, okay.
And I have to be careful about policy, stepping into, wading too deeply into policy as an independent leader here. But when we think about, again, I just want to ditto what Dr. Jenkins said. This is an effort to compete
Yes,
globally.
ma'am, I know all that, but how, if they're so swell, how come we have to pay people to drive them?
Well, maybe then the quick answer for me is I didn't take advantage of incentives, but I also bought used vehicles on the market. I love it. They're wonderful to drive. And so on.
Okay.
Senator, similar for myself. We
What's your
purchased Maureen Hinman.
Damn,
My hair's longer in my picture, sorry.
I'm sorry. I don't even know who I'm talking to. Go ahead, Ms. Hinman.
I did want to follow up with my colleague, Ms. Gross. I purchased my first EV, fully
Yes,
electric.
ma'am, but
in
if they're so
2015.
swell, how come we have to pay people to drive?
Well, I purchased, I can only speak for myself, but we purchased our first vehicle in 2015 because it was easier to charge, cheaper to drive. It drives better, faster, smoother. There's no muck on the bottom of our garage. And frankly, when I had my first child, some of the safety features were just better.
But here's what I'm sorry, you're not answering my question. How many vehicles, how many cars do we have in the United States?
280.
This lady right here, in the middle. I'm sorry, if I could see your name, I wouldn't just point to you.
If I could, I'd like to defer to my colleague who
Well, I'd
has
like to hear
better.
your answer, okay?
How many calls?
How many cars are there?
295 million?
Okay, and what percentage are electric vehicles?
1.6.
Okay, hold up that chart. Here's where all electric vehicles are. California loves them. The West Coast loves them. Everybody else is kind of lukewarm. Okay, and I'm trying to understand why. But let me move on to this. Let me ask these two gentlemen. I think the reason is because they're more expensive. And people, when they drive a car, like it to run. And when it runs out of electricity, it stops. And they can't find a place to charge them. So let me ask these two gentlemen. I don't want to be unfair. So it's clear we got a long way to go. We got 283 million cars in America, and we got 3.3 million electric vehicles. We got a long way to go. And at least these three folks think that we need to take taxpayer money and give enough money to American people so they'll walk away from gas cars and drive electric vehicles. How much is that going to cost? I'm going to ask them in a second if I have time. But how much do you think it will cost for us to basically bribe every American to drive an electric car?
Well, Senator, excuse me, Dave Sweeter with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. I would just underscore your original question with this. There's really two things at play as it relates to what's
How much
happening.
money do you think it'll cost
Costs
to
are
bribe the American people enough to make them drive electric cars, to move those numbers?
Electrification's increasing as it relates to cost. Only a fraction of currently eligible
How much do you
vehicles
think
are
it'll
eligible
cost?
for the federal tax credit. So
How much do you think it'll cost, David?
Senator, I think I quoted earlier
I'm
that
calling on you, sir.
Apologies.
How much do you think it'll cost?
it ultimately depends on
You
consumer
don't know,
adoption.
do you?
We don't have an exact figure.
You think
no,
we ought
Senator.
to just keep throwing money at it until we hit the jackpot? How about you, Mr. Davis?
Eventually, if you put enough charging stations, that'll solve for range anxiety. Because the reason I didn't buy one is because I may have to drive 450
How
miles
much
to
do you
East
think
Tennessee
it'll
at Spur Woman.
cost the American taxpayer for us to convince the American people, frankly, bribe the American people to get rid of the gas car and drive an electric car? Can any of you give me a figure?
Yes, Senator, the Treasury Department reports we spent about $1 billion year to date. So for the first half of this year, so roughly $2 billion this
Well,
year.
we're behind.
As I noted,
How much do you think it'll cost, Doctor? You're a doctor,
so
right?
$2 billion this year is what the estimate from the Treasury
Okay,
Department.
How much do you think it will cost for us to, let's say, get 75% of these 200?
How much will it cost American consumers to remain?
How much, do you know how much it'll cost, Doctor?
No one knows the future with certainty, Senator.
Right, you just think we ought to keep throwing money at it until we hit the jackpot.
I think
Is
we
that
ought to
right?
set a stable policy framework that allows American consumers to become familiar with the environment and American businesses to innovate and to compete within that stable framework. That's what I said
And how
earlier in
much
my
will that
testimony.
cost?
Will cost less than the benefits delivered by
You
the
don't
policy.
care how much it costs, do you?
I care if the benefits exceed the cost. I don't care about the costs.
You
These are
don't care how much
investments in the
it
public.
costs, do you?
I care very much how much it costs. As long as the benefits exceed the cost, that's an investment worth making.
Well, so, okay.
How much
So-
does it cost to seed the industries of the future to China?
I get to ask the questions, Doc.
Sorry.
You're at Princeton, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. How are Jewish students doing at Princeton? Are they feeling better?
No, that has
more
nothing to do with the hearing today. I'm
I
not going
didn't
to
think
comment on
you'd
that.
want, I didn't think you'd want to talk about that. Do any of you have any idea how much it would cost to
Senator,
get, say, 75% of the American people
Senator,
driving electric cars?
if I could, your question is fair. One answer to it is the cost of inaction of the U.S. not competing is far greater than any incentive on the front
Okay,
end.
quantify that for me. Oh, man, I'm way over. I'm sorry, Sheldon. Quantify that for me, because here's my...
Once you wrap up with this, because I think
I will.
everybody's had a chance to try to
will.
answer your question, and
Here's
you're
my
repeating
problem.
it at this
Okay,
point.
we all want clean air, we all want bright water, we all want to eat, and we all want to live indoors. Okay? But there are trade-offs in all of this. Despite what the Princeton professor thinks, we don't have unlimited money. This is not Princeton. So we have to decide the cost and the benefits. And nobody seems to be able to quantify the costs. They just say, keep throwing money at it, throwing money at it, throwing money at it. And nobody can really quantify the benefits, except if we don't do it, then we're all going to die. And when I go back to my people and say, your electricity costs have gone up 30%, but it's for a good cause. Why, Kennedy? Because you're going to die if we don't do it. Why, Kennedy? Because a professor at Princeton says so. That doesn't work for most Americans. Can you answer that for me? You see my frustration. I love driving an electric car. I think they're really cool. But the median household income in my state's $55,000. Our Princeton professor probably makes that in a week. Okay? They don't care what they think at Princeton. Can you answer that for me, guys?
I can't answer how much it's going
Good.
to cost, but I can tell you that just last year alone, China in the EV market subsidized it by $12.4 billion, and that's their annual spend. It's more than, even with in our best year, it's more than
And
two-thirds of the
China's
United
doing
States
great,
spends.
but let me ask you a question. How much will it cost China to become carbon neutral by 2050?
I am very concerned, well, they won't, but I'm more concerned about the
How much
risk
would it
to the
cost
U.S.
them?
economy of
How
losing
much
the
would
auto
it-
manufacturing industry.
How much would it cost them? Do you know? See, nobody talks about the cost. I'll tell you how much it'll cost them. It'll cost them $1 trillion a year, starting today, to be carbon neutral by 2050. You know how much it'll cost Russia? $250 billion a year, 3 times what their defense budget. Now, if you believe that Vladimir Putin is going to spend $250 billion for climate change, then you'll never own your own home. So we go spend all this money, which y'all can't quantify. We just keep spending. They don't spend the money. They're at an advantage, and you know how much world temperatures are lowered? None. Zero, zilch, nada. And I can't believe our chairman hadn't cut me off. But I am done.
Now's your moment. Thank
I
you,
am
Senator
done.
Kennedy, for your enthusiastic participation.
Then we talk. All right, we're back. And my opinion from the intro has not changed. If anything, it's gotten stronger. Senator Kennedy deserves real credit here. He came into that hearing with one job, to get a straight answer, and he held that line the entire time. He was funny, he was sharp, and underneath all the Southern charm, he was making a genuinely serious point that most people in Washington are too afraid to make out loud. The question was not complicated. If the product is good enough to stand on its own, why does the government have to bribe people to buy it? That is a fair question. And the fact that 5 witnesses, 5 people invited specifically to speak on this topic, could not give a direct answer tells you everything. Now let's talk about those witnesses, because I want to be fair. Dr. Jenkins talked about needing a stable policy framework. Fine, that's not a crazy thing to say in isolation. But Senator Kennedy wasn't asking about frameworks. He was asking about dollars and cents. How much is this going to cost? And instead of a number, He got a philosophy lecture. That's not an answer, that's a dodge. Miss Gross said she'd prefer not to comment on policy incentives. Fair enough, professional boundary respected. But then what are you there for? Miss Henman was at least passionate and personal about it. Bought her first EV in 2015, drives 3 of them, loves them. And honestly, good for Miss Henman. That's a real experience and it matters. But Senator Kennedy isn't arguing EVs don't work for anyone. He's pointing out they work for about 1.6% of cars on American roads. There are 283 million cars in this country and only 3.3 million are electric. That's not a revolution. That's a niche. And that chart showing where EVs are actually popular says it all. California loves them. The West Coast loves them. Everyone else is lukewarm. Senator Kennedy told you exactly why. They cost more upfront, and when they run out of charge, you can't always find a place to fill up. That's not a political talking point. That's just reality for anyone living outside a major city. Now the China argument. This is where it got interesting. The witness who brought up China's $12.4 billion annual EV subsidy was making a real point. The global race for auto manufacturing is real. But Senator Kennedy came right back with something nobody wanted to engage with. If China needs $1 trillion a year to go carbon neutral by 2050, and Russia needs $250 billion a year, which is 3 times their entire defense budget, does anyone seriously believe those countries are going to do it? And if they don't, what does America's sacrifice actually accomplish for global temperatures? The answer, as Senator Kennedy put it, is nothing. 0. And that is uncomfortable to sit with, but it is a legitimate question that deserves a real answer, not just an appeal to fear. Which brings me to the most powerful moment in the whole video. Senator Kennedy said, "When I go back to my people and say your electricity costs have gone up 30%, but it's for a good cause. Why? Because you're going to die if we don't. Why? Because a professor at Princeton says so. That doesn't work for most Americans." And he is right. The median household income in Louisiana is $55,000 a year. These are real people with real budgets. Nobody is against clean air. But there is a massive difference between wanting clean air and being able to absorb a 30% rise in electricity costs while also being asked to replace your car with something that costs $10,000 more upfront. That is not a small ask for most families. And the experts in that room could not quantify the total cost of the transition or the concrete benefits. Just keep investing. The cost of inaction is higher. Okay, but how much higher? Show the number. If the case is so strong, make the case. That's what I respect about Senator Kennedy's approach. He's not saying EVs are evil. He keeps it light, did you catch the Princeton joke? But the substance underneath is serious. He's saying accountability matters, taxpayer money is not unlimited, and trust us it'll be worth it is not a policy. This hearing was never really about electric cars. It was about who gets to decide how Americans spend their money, and whether the people making those decisions are willing to be honest about the trade-offs. Senator Kennedy thinks they should be. So do I. Drop a comment below. Do you drive an EV? Are the incentives worth it? Let's have the conversation down there since Congress clearly isn't having it. Like the video if you think Senator Kennedy made fair points. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.